thank you for that. Thank you for that, Norman and Margaret. I want to leave it to John. John.
Yeah, I was just thinking that so in some ways there's so much coincidence in all of the things which happened around you, but at the same time, how much did you feel that God was opening up the doorways for you?
Yes, actually, I don't believe there are ever any coincidences with God.
Yes.
That he, things that people say, oh, what a coincidence. No, no, no. We are under God's care. And, whether we believe him or not, but he's there. And if we only need to call on him, and we will help us. Excuse me.
We could see God's planning in things again and again.
Yes,
it was really most remarkable.
Yes. Is it that you were only seeing it in hindsight, or did you feel that God was giving you options? So many times in this day and age, people are going, I don't know what God wants me to do. I've got all of these options. So which one do I choose? Can you maybe expand on that?
Yes, guidance is so important, and we used to pray, and I think you need to pray, and you need to ask God. But the scriptures were so important to me, and when we were reading the scriptures together, we, sort of often, and when we were buying our first house when we were in our 60s, because I remember I was just reading the scriptures, and what it said in Exodus somewhere, I think it was. Something, be strong, go and do it, or something like that. And it was out of context probably, but it was the word of the Lord to me and to Norman at the time. So we've often, the scriptures guide us, advice from friends guide us, sort of, you can talk amongst people, and ask what they think, but actually God is in it all.
Yeah, that's great. While you were mentioning that, Margaret, something just came to my mind with regards to models and mentors. You just shared with us that we had experience from people were, like telling you things to do, and you were following the experiences. Did you have models? Did you have role models, mentors, and how did they impact you?
And you can do yours later. Yeah, well, I had a wonderful Sunday school teacher, and she, when we were quite young, about 11 years old or something, and she, and the church that we went to, they used to give out these Bible notes for children as well as for adults, and we were taught to read the Bible every day, and that, that is so, I think it's so important, because to always read the Bible, is such a, I don't know, it's like a map for life, really. The book of Proverbs is a brilliant book, I think. Sort of, I think everyone should read Proverbs, whether they believe in God or not, because
so wonderful,
yes, so much wonderful tips for living life. But anyway, she also gave me at the time, and gave us her little class that she had, what she called a quiet time notebook, and what it was you read the scripture, and you only had a few verses to read. It wasn't a big thing for us kids. You had a few verses to read, and then you said, what was your favorite verse? What's is there a promise to claim? Is there a commandment to obey? Is there an error to avoid? Is there a warning to heed? And those sort of questions. And then you just had to write. Wasn't every one of those could be answered every time, but there was always something. So it was made you sort of really dissect the scriptures. Yes. And we were taught that. And really, the Word of God, the Bible, I think, is so, so important. And I know today in Alpha, what's his name? Who's his name?
HTB.
HTB. They recommend, and they do 3 chapters of it's reading the Bible through in a year, 3 chapters of the Old Testament, a couple of chapters of the New, and a psalm or a proverb. You know, and I just think it's wonderful.
Map for life. Thank you for that. You said it's a map for life. I have to write that. That's a very great statement to make. And you, Norman, as a pastor,
Yes.
did you have role models? Did you have mentors? And we look through the Old Testament and New Testament. Elisha had Elijah. In the New Testament, Timothy had Paul. Did you have anybody you looked up to while growing ministry?
Yes, indeed I had. But first, let me introduce it by saying that also, I think Spurgeon, for instance, although he had gone to be with the Lord long before I was born, but he was a tremendous influence. My mother thought a lot of Spurgeon, and so I was brought up to think of him as a significant person.
Yeah.
And I began to read his sermons as I grew up, and they were a very important factor in my life. However, in my first pastorate on the island, I didn't have any oversight at all, and I quickly learned the need of somebody else to turn to. Of course, I turned to the scriptures, and you know, I just was forced. I was preaching twice every Sunday on this island, so half an hour's message. So I had to study the scriptures diligently, and they were a tremendous guide. But when I got into the ministry, very quick, it was long before mentors. These days, there's a lot of encouragement to have a mentor. I remember when that first came in, and I look back on my own experience and thought, yes, that's exactly what I had, but I didn't use the word mentor, because the thought that came to me in starting in the ministry was that every pastor needs a pastor. Now, I mean, obviously, I was put into a fraternal, which is a group of pastors meeting together, and they were all good friends, but often we were not on the same wavelength spiritually at all. Incidentally, in those days, it was before it was recognized that smoking was bad for your health, and the room in some fraternals could be just so full of tobacco smoke that you could hardly breathe. Really, not every pastor was compatible with my understanding of things, but there was one man who stood out in my mind supremely. His name was John Cager. He was the chairman of the Keswick Council. Now, in those days, the Keswick movement was a very powerful spiritual movement, holding convention meetings. It still continues in the town of Keswick once a year, but a publishing wing to that. And John Cager was a wonderful influence in my life. I went to him. He was in an adjoining church. We were friends, but soon the relationship was very much father and son in the gospel. I think I'm entitled to say that I felt I served him well as a son. That I visited him in sicknesses. He had severe sickness at one stage, and you know, I played the part of a son to him, but he's definitely shaped my whole understanding of the gospel and the ministry. And whenever I was under any stress or difficulty, I could go and unburden the whole thing to him, and we would pray through things together. So I would certainly encourage. He said to me, actually, quoting, I think, Martin Lloyd-Jones, but he said to me that at the age of 30, men want somebody to help them. They're looking everywhere for help. At the age of 40, they're less inclined to want to take that help. And men in their 50s start movements. So if you, depends what age you are as you're listening to me speaking, you'll know the way to react. But certainly in the early years, 20 to 30, I would say to be sure that you have a mentor of your own choosing. It may be that some organizer, the Baptists, provided an older brother, a senior brother, as they used to call him. I had one. He was a dear man, and I would want to honor him, but his input, he did his best, but I probably wasn't very receptive. Whereas the one I felt God had chosen for me, the relationship there endured until finally I went to see, John as he was going home to glory.
Is there anything that you'd want to say to younger people today? Because today's society has all of these individuals and they're all trying to be unique. But is there something from your heart that you would want to say to them about mentoring and about having somebody to, as it were, knock a ball against the wall?
Your experience, John, would be in a much wider area than my own. I think in my experience, a lot of younger people are doing character analysis and that sort of thing on the internet. There's a lot of resource out there, a dangerous amount of resource out there, and quite a lot of very young men are offering themselves as life coaches to other people. Well, God bless them in doing that, but really you can't beat the father-son relationship if you've got the right man to be a father and the right man to be a son. Don't force anything. It's better to make your own way than to be following a bad leader. Don't get into a gang. And there can be Christian gangs as well as, the proper mafia and so on. Just be careful where you make your choices. Above all, Jesus is the shepherd. Above all, listen to his voice and spend much time in the secret with Jesus alone.
Yeah, I completely and utterly agree with that. Today's society is all about trying to pigeonhole you, and it's something which I don't agree with. So let's go on to another topic. Are there things which you have felt that you were in a situation and God protected you?
Oh yes, many times, but one especially that I'd love to tell you about, because I think it has life lessons in it. I was about 10 years old, and Margaret and I both grew up in the war. She doesn't like me to say this, but I always insist that she's much younger than I am. Actually, it's 4 years. It varies between 3.5 and 4, according to how our birthdays are going. But the point is, and incidentally, we both grew up in the same church once she came down. So the war was going on, and I don't want to bore you with the war, but it wasn't boring to go through it. And the air raid siren, as you may know,
John,
up and down. Up and down. Hello?
Norman, please, can you clarify? Is it First World War or Second World War?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, insult!
Not the Boer War, and not the second, not the First World War. Definitely the Second World War.
Second World, yes.
And the searchlights crossing, flashing or across the sky, the beams, immense beams of light. I mean, lasers hadn't been invented, but how they had these most powerful searchlights, ack guns going off like continuous roars of thunder, shrapnel falling from the sky, dive bombers coming in, and they put whistles on some of these bombs just to scare you even more. Terrible experience to pass through, to be honest.
Very good.